Thank you, everyone. So we already know a little bit about Bill and Rogerio. So let's start this panel discussion by getting to know Bob. Bob, you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Francis from Asset Performance Technologies. Bill did a great job describing our solution in his presentation. I need to correct the record. As I spent many years at AspenTech, I was not in the room, but I understand this morning my good friend Antonio Pietri made the claim that Aspen was the only true software company represented here at the ARC Forum. Wrong. APT is a software company. We're based in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and we have two flagship pillars to our solution, as Bill laid out in his presentation: our Preventance APM software analytics platform. But most people know us for the asset strategy library that Bill referenced, over 800 equipment groups in there. And we've gone to market with the asset strategy library as an OEM product pulled through, sold through Meridian. Now GE Digital offers that to their clients, as well as Bentley and before that Ivera. So we have two ways that we bring the products to market, and that is that OEM channel pulled through from some of our partners in the industry, and also a direct sales model that we work with clients directly. So excited to be here and join the panel here.
Great. Can somebody from ARC help with the mic in case somebody has a question from the audience? Any questions at this point of time? Because I have a lot. Sure.
Okay, just out of curiosity, what are the challenges in retiring the old work processes, ensuring that those aren't continuing behind the scenes?
I think that's for you,
addressing
Bill.
to me or to the panel? I guess I can try and take that one first. Retiring the old work processes, it varies depending on the workforce that I'm dealing with. Usually, at the lab, it's kind of tough because the culture there is they're not very willing to change. There's still that fear that as we introduce new technologies, because a lot of stuff that comes out of Preventance does give you guidance around condition monitoring activities and doing inspections through system engineers rather than through a lot of the teardown activities or the standard parts replacement. And they're just really uncomfortable with that. Their feeling is you're doing this because you want to reduce the number of staff here and we're going to lose our jobs, you know. And so there's that big pushback. And it's, you know, I mean, but that's not the first time I've ever dealt with it either. So a lot of it is just getting them to understand that it's not about doing less, it's about doing something different, which provides us more information and allows us to be more timely in taking care of our equipment.
Well, my experience.
Can you pull the mic? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that would work as well. Sorry. Yeah.
It's working?
Yeah, it should work.
I have two comments. First of all, I'm an automation engineer, so I truly believe the automation doesn't come to replace people. It replaces tasks. And of course, people should be concerned not about losing their jobs, but changing the way they do that. But of course, there are a lot of people that get concerned about their activities. And one thing that we learned during our process is that not everyone is prepared for this. So you have to, it's a change of mindset. Mm-hmm. So you have to select the proper people that are able to perform this mindset changing. In order to put in place a new working process, you must select people who believes in this new working process. Otherwise, you probably will fail. The people will continue to work their mindset in the previous way.
It's a leadership question. I have addressed this in a recent contract that I was working on where there was significant culture change that was going to be required. And we took a bit different strategy in the internal education and marketing, if you would, of the change that was coming, and offered some fun incentives for all the employees to go to an intranet site using Brainshark. They had a tutorial. This is what's coming. This is why we're doing it. These are going to be the benefits for everybody in the company and the bottom line and our shareholders. And each of the employees got logged in, and if they spent 15 minutes to go through the presentation and answer a few questions, then we had raffles and drawings, and there was a scoreboard that showed how many employees from each group completed the internal training and the rollout. So we took what my colleagues here have rightly identified as some people viewed as stressful and is my job in question here, and we turned it around and made it a fun internal sort of contest to see, hey, if you're on an airplane and someone sitting next to you asks, well, what does your company do? Can you answer that question in 2 minutes? And be able to present the story. And when we launched that internal training program, it was very cost effective, not very expensive to put a Brainshark up on an intranet site that all employees can go to, and to put some fun into it, some fun questions about company history, about some of the executives. We had some of the executives give us some funny pictures, childhood pictures, can you name who this is type stuff. And had fun with it, and that we saw adoption jump tremendously by taking that approach.
Very interesting. Yeah. Anybody else from audience got a question at this time?
I have a question for Rogerio. So you guys set up a kind of centralized asset performance monitoring or asset monitoring center. Can you comment about the usefulness of more, I'll call it first principles, FMEA kind of models, or did you do anything to sort of automate diagnosis with those models with data coming into them versus some of the more kind of machine learning environments you had on the right-hand side, like Predix or some of the other analytical stuff? Did you have a blend of both? Did you focus on one more than the other? Was one better than the other? Can you comment around that?
Yeah. Well, you're in the first steps of this digital transformation. We have not implemented any kind of analytics at the moment. We have already prospected some of solutions that we will probably put in place. But the first automation that we put was to, once we realized the FMEA studies that we have done, we identified that we are not measuring the proper KPIs to monitor the performance of some assets in order to understand if we are getting close to a failure. So we have developed some calculations, typically to understand when a pump is near to cavitate, for an example. We have created this platform using the LabVIEW that I showed before. It doesn't have too much intelligence on it, but it automates some calculations in order to give some new visualization of the performance of some assets, particularly the critical assets.
So that was more of, those were calculations based on what you empirically know are the kinds of things that are going to lead to cavitation, right?
Yeah.
Not so much something that was statistically determined by looking at data over time or machine learning type activities.
Yeah, we use Massimo as our maintenance plans. We have all the historical data there also. We have some reports that use, of course, our historical data in order to evaluate our maintenance plans. But that's not the main focus of this central here.
Yeah. Anybody else? In the meantime, I have a question for Bob. Bob, there was a recent article which said that downtime is a multi-billion-dollar problem, and it continues to grow. And in fact, ISA, they did a study which states that it's a $650 billion every year problem. So we have all this technology, we have all these asset management solutions, EAM, predictive maintenance, and all. Why do you think we have such a big problem that keeps on growing?
That's a great question. I think it comes to adoption. I think it's interesting. I've been away working in a parallel space for a few years. I haven't been at the forum in a few years, so I'm back here today and attending the sessions, and I'm hearing many of the same topics being discussed. Some of the buzzwords have changed, but it just, for me, was a reminder that, to the question we had earlier, adoption in the organization is hindering some of these companies from achieving the results they all agreed to, they all desired, and there's a whole banquet room full of technology companies next door here that all have incredibly powerful solutions. And I think the takeaway and what that study identified was adoption is poor. They're not achieving the full benefit of the technology that they've already paid for. And I think Braskem, you guys have experienced the same.
Yeah. Actually, we got it was a great experience for us when we realized, oh, we have maintenance teams in São Paulo, in Rio de Janeiro, Rio Grande do Sul, in Germany, in the US. Only about the first step that we mentioned to share what are your critical equipments in your vision for a plant with a similar technology. So we have shared those experiences, and it has changed in some of the conclusions that we had previously. We have shared also the failure modes analysis. Right. So only by this experience was rich enough. And then we started to take a look in the technology that they were using. So even for just giving you an example, we were pretty amazed by the solutions that were developed using Ozesoft PI in one particular facility. They have developed a lot of like a cockpit for the maintenance guy, right, using a tool that we thought was only for the process engineer. So it's a very simple way to use a tool, a software that was already in place. So just copy those screens, take to the facility.
Would you like to comment?
I was going to say, I'm not sure we even really understand the true cost of our reactive maintenance and the downtime that's there. I mean, and a lot of companies don't appropriately account for that and look at the perturbation that the organization goes through. You know, we look at it, we look at a piece of equipment, we say, oh, we've got this labor associated with it, we've got these parts, and if we're a little bit forward thinking, we're saying, oh, I've got lost production time and that cost me that. And if you read some of the TPM articles, they'll say, well, lost production time is 4 to 6 times the cost of the repairs for the equipment. But I just read through an article not too long ago where they went through and they categorized each of the perturbations inside the organization every time a piece of equipment failed. You know, how much time, how much extra cost. And it was remarkable. You know, you looked at the article and you said, well, yeah, that seems reasonable, and the guy's counting 10 minutes here, 20 minutes here for meetings because of the failed equipment. When it all got done, it was 15, in his example, it was 15 times the cost of the repair, okay? And I don't think we capture that in our organizations, and I think that's part of the reason why you get a lot of the executives who don't understand the impact that's there.
True. Paula got a question.
Just to follow up on that, Bill, what would be your recommendation on how to change that?
I think, from the standpoint of maintenance, and reliability, it's really our job to start to understand more of the business environment and understand what the executives are looking at and make sure we present a true picture, because, we're asking for, and we really believe that, with some investment, and every one of these opportunities has an investment, there's a huge payback, okay, to the organization through improved productivity, improved quality, you know, and reduced safety incidences, or I should say improved safety environment.
Yeah.
So, you know, those benefits, we got to be looking at those and actually explaining them to the organization. And one of the things that I've always done is sit down with the finance and accounting people and get them to tell me what their cost numbers are, okay? If I'm looking at labor hours, what do you put to labor hours? If I'm looking at engineering hours, what do you put to engineering hours? If I can do this, you know, and we cut out a meeting, you know,
Yeah.
because the plant manager doesn't have to be involved, what do you say that's worth? Okay, and get them thinking along those lines. And when it's all said and done, you've got that compilation of, you know, what the cost benefit is, and then they're willing to stand up in a meeting and support you in that effort with the executives and say, you know, this really is a good direction to go.
Do you have anything to add to that? Would you agree with that, or do you have another
Yeah,
strategy?
totally agree. Yeah, exactly, perfect.
Anybody else from audience have a question? Well, then
Just one comment on this
Yeah,
to,
sure.
to complement. Every conclusion the leaders have to make is important for them not to only take a look at on one single KPI or two. You have to take the whole picture of it. And maybe you have to, from the maintenance and the reliability perspective, we need to think twice the way we communicate the results. We don't only publish those KPIs that we
Yeah.
use to monitor our own performance, but what the business wants to understand. Again, it was easy for us to try to find some maintenance cost reduction. But is it exactly what the leader of the business wants? No, he needs to get more from the assets.
Yeah.
This is something that is more noble to look for.
So to pile on to that, I think the one thing that none of you said that I was surprised, because we hear it increasingly from customers, is the safety aspect. So everybody always says over and over again, reliable plant is a safe plant. The large percent of incidents happen when you're going through turnovers or having to do work that's associated to failures or reliability. So I think the biggest unquantifiable thing in there is the safety impact of an increase in availability, especially in hazardous processes like many of the ones you have in Braskem.
Yeah, one problem that we have is that most of the results about maintenance reliability relies on cost avoidance or incidents that you will not face. So once the company needs to measure the results, okay, this is this incidents that we didn't have.
Yeah.
So, okay, but I was not expecting to have. So we need to make sure that we know how to show those results properly.
So I'm going to ask a question. My question is for Bob. Bob, you have spent a lot of time at asset management companies. You have been with Aspen Tech, and now you are with APT now. Over these years, do you think the voice of the customer has changed?
Yes, especially during my time at Meridian, we spent a significant effort rebuilding the user community and trying to provide a platform where the software company and the architects writing the software were coming up with great ideas, but we really wanted to make sure we were capturing what the user feedback was in tangible, applicable ways, not simple upgrades to the software, but their business processes. And my observation is over this journey, this 20 years that I've been in the industry, the voice of the customer has changed from sort of a very reactive, we have these three objectives that we need to solve for, and not looking at the 3 and 5 year business strategy. And in our most recent round of Voice of Customer with APT, there's a much more holistic, longer term view of the business. And I think that's the most significant and exciting change that I've seen in the industry was the maintenance and reliability and the risk and safety guys were in these silos, and they all had their primary objectives. Now, in this most latest round of Voice of Customer, you see a much more holistic business view, and I think that you've seen that at Braskem, and I know, Bill, you've certainly seen that at your time in the steel industry and now with the nuclear.
Yeah, I see a lot more emphasis on understanding risk. You know, not just failure and avoiding that failure, but understanding the risks associated with individual failures and the pieces of equipment, both the personnel and the financial risk.
Rogerio, you want to comment on that?
No, I just wondered that some examples coming into my mind, because taking a look at a single kinds of equipment, typically for the heat exchanger, if it was monitored only by the production engineer, probably he would get some conclusions. The process engineer will get other view. It's a more long time view than the production engineer. And the West, for the maintenance guy, he's worried about the mechanical integrity of the equipment. So again, it's all about collaborative. So put people with different knowledge to work together with different approaches, so we can get the best conclusion for the asset.
So we have consumed, maybe we can ask one more question. Anybody interested in the audience?
Okay, just to follow up on that a little bit more, for Bill and Rogerio, are you actually being more vocal with your suppliers in what you want and how to serve them, as opposed to them coming in and say, hey, look at this thing that I got, you really need it?
Well, first of all, as I mentioned, we have an intense relationship with most of the main suppliers because, of course, we need them. We need to support all this platform that we have already installed. And they are doing their jobs trying to sell more products that they have recently developed. Nowadays, to tell you truly honestly, we are a little bit confused because for the same problem, you have so many options to solve. You can ask for tens, more than a dozen of suppliers that can probably solve the same problem. And if you will give the possibility for all of them to test their solutions, you'll probably end up with a Frankenstein in your plant. So, and we have gone through this problem before. So, again, it's very important for the company to design a strategy, focus on the problem, and then do some kind of technology prospection. But if you have already designed a strategy and have focused on the problem, you probably will end up with only 3, 4 suppliers that actually will drive you to the solution.
Makes sense.
So at the lab, that is a challenge. Being a national laboratory, you know, we have some requirements to bring different vendors in, support different vendors, you know, and help small businesses grow. But one of the things that we've done, in the one slide I had there with the simplified execution model, you know, the prioritization process, the scoping and the maintenance basis fed off into our supply chain arena. And really we take, you know, coming out of that, we look then to define what it is we need before we ask a vendor to submit anything to us. So now we're trying to turn the table rather than going out and shopping. You know, we're coming out to the community and saying, okay, this is what we really need and want. Okay, what do you have that matches that? Because I mean, when I was a young engineer, I mean, it was real easy for us to get, dazzled by all the latest gadgets and toys and everything else, but it came back down to what do you need?
Yeah.
What's the job that you're trying to do, and what do you really need? And so we try and now drive that through that scoping and that maintenance basis to help get us into the right procurement strategies.
So with that, I would like to conclude this session. Thank you, everyone. And can we have a round of applause for our speakers and panelists?